White House spokeswoman KJP, Karina Jean-Pierre, was asked by the assembled D.C. press corps a question that a lot of people get sucked into, this Biden doddering at events. So at the G7 and at that Hollywood fundraiser with his bestie, Barack.
And also at Juneteenth when he was standing there and he looked comatose.
It's the same old that we've been talking about for 4 years.
Well, it seems to be getting worse.
Not really. And KJP says, don't believe your lying eyes. Of course. Why not? Don't believe your lying eyes.
It's deep fakes, cheap fakes.
Don't believe your lying eyes with respect to people coming across the border illegally. Don't believe your lying eyes with respect to the commander-in-chief's mental and physical well-being.
Instead of talking about the president's performance in office, and what I mean by that is his legislative wins, what he's been able to do for the American people across the country, we're seeing these deep fakes, these manipulated videos. And it is, again, done in bad faith.
Wow. Right.
Yeah, they're selectively edited to make President Joe Biden look senile, dubbing them deep fakes, cheap fakes. She was also asked about Juneteenth, about, what was going on there.
Okay, let's talk about Juneteenth. Just because you're standing up listening to music and not dancing, that is not a health issue. That is just not a health issue.
Yeah, and with respect to the fundraiser where Obama had to guide him off stage, Obama issued a statement saying, what you saw isn't what you saw. And if you can't believe Barack Obama, who can you believe?
Let's not forget, President Obama, President Biden have a relationship.
No,
they are
they're
friends.
very much in love.
They're like family to each other.
Exactly.
And I think that's what you saw. You saw the president put his hand on the back of President Biden, and they walked off the stage after taking questions or at an event taking questions from Jimmy Kimmel. That is what you saw.
That's all you saw. There's nothing. See, it was great, good, and then he's ready to go for June 27th, and that's all I care about. So he's good.
Don't forget, he was dragged away by the Easter Bunny one year. Okay,
he's good.
If he doesn't know where he's going, how is he going to tell the country where we have to go?
He's good.
Oh, he wears special shoes. He needs a CPAP to breathe at night.
I don't know what your point is. They say he's good. He's ready to go.
Okay.
Great. So that's what they're telling you about him. You're going to see him on June 27th. Make your own decision. Speaking of which, the rules are now set for June 27th, which will include microphones getting cut off when it's not a particular candidate's turn to speak. No props or pre-written notes are allowed.
Oh, boy.
And RFK Jr. still has a chance to get in. He's got to get 15% in some poll. Not going to happen. For more on the horse race and other such topics, please be joined by former Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, now the president and CEO of Young America's Foundation. Scott Walker, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning. Great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
So what do you think Trump needs to accomplish in the debate in less than 10 days now?
Two things. Talk about the issues that matter to everyday Americans. It's high prices, it's border security, it's public safety. Talk in real terms and about real solutions, which he's done and has been successful on, and I think can be too. And our poll at Young America's Foundation shows even the economy is the number, even amongst college students, I should say, the economy is the number one issue. It's got to talk about high prices and jobs, but also border security, public safety. And then secondly, and this is why I like the format with cutting the mics off when you're not speaking, he needs to let the American people see just what a confused mess Joe Biden is.
Yep.
4 years ago, he talked over him during that debate over and over and over again. Joe Biden inadvertently was giving him every reason to win, and that is because if people actually heard how incompetent he is, I think a lot of folks who didn't like the tone, didn't like the tweets, would have wised up in advance. I think those are the people that need to swing back in a state like mine in Wisconsin, and they can if just given a chance to hear and compare bold ideas, solutions that work versus a very, very confused Joe Biden.
Well, if you see video, which I'm sure you've watched from the debate years ago, he's dealing with a completely different person. President Trump is dealing
Oh,
with.
absolutely.
I mean,
he was a mess 4 years ago, and
Ugh.
imagine now. You're exactly right. I mean, what you're talking about, it's actually sad. Watching the Prime Minister of Italy have, almost like someone at a care facility have to say, "Oh, no, Joe, it's over here. The parachute's here. We're all watching this thing here." It really is sad, not just embarrassing, but sad. And it's unfortunate whether you're Republican or Democrat. It's just sad for Americans. But people, his defenders, seem, do you see him at the State of the Union?
Yeah.
When you're juiced up and you're reading off a script and you sound like an angry man telling us to get off your lawn, that's bad enough. But now this is somebody who's going to actually have to think. And remember, the other problem he's got is for 40 years plus, he's been saying whatever he thought he needed to say to appease the audience he's in front of. He doesn't really know what he believes. He doesn't have core beliefs. There's people I disagree with on the left, but who actually believe in things. Joe Biden's been all over the map in every issue. So now you add an age to the fact that he's had a career of not really having any core principles, and he's going to be a mess on the 26th.
Yeah, I mean, although my preference is to not lower expectations for him, is to say, to those that are, running around saying, oh, he's still vital and vibrant. He's exacting behind closed doors in meetings with Ali Mayorkas, so Mayorkas says, and Dr. Jill says he's still a prodigious lover,
Oh my God,
and
stop.
all of the go, okay, sure, fine, whatever you want to communicate to us, I take it at face value, and then let's see it, and let's see if he lives up to the expectations that they're creating for him, and hopefully, and I think this is where you were going with Trump, is Trump just has to restrain himself, right? The temperament is the whole ball game for him at that debate. Just restrain himself from devolving into sort of the petty and the snide. Just sort of rise above it. And if and when Joe Biden fails to live up expectations, it should be obvious. Let it be obvious. Let people come to their own conclusions. You don't have to beat them over the head about it.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, the objective for both candidates, whether they meet this expectation or not by their team, should be to act like they've acted in the past as presidents when they've given the State of the Union address. And I think we can safely say, those of us who watched Donald Trump's State of the Union addresses, often come back and say, boy, he sounded presidential. He was on his game. He sounded like someone who is and should be the President of the United States. He laid out a clear plan. He needs to do that. He needs to have that kind of temperament. He needs to look like a president that people can gravitate towards. And most importantly, as I mentioned, he needs to talk about the things that people care about. High prices and jobs, border security and economy, and then let Joe Biden try to live up to that expectation of his State of the Union address, which, by the way, I don't think was that good in terms of temperament. It just showed that he didn't fall apart.
Yeah,
right, he didn't fall
but
asleep.
that shouldn't be the standard.
Yeah, stop
All right,
lowering
so
your expectations, to my point.
Yeah, in regards to immigration, how should President Trump handle the death, the murder of Rachel Morin and Lincoln Riley? How should he, approach that subject with Biden?
I actually think that's one of the few instances where the more emotion he can show, the better. The more disgust, the more disdain. I think that's the sort of thing. And I remember decades ago when Michael Dukakis was in a debate with then Vice President George Bush, and he was asked about his position on the death penalty, and the questioner asked what he would want to do if someone raped and killed his wife, and he gave this kind of generic answer that was deplete of any emotion. He could have said he was against the death penalty, but he should have said in that moment, "I'd want to kill the guy myself."
Yeah.
But that's exactly why he could have made that. But that's exactly why you can't leave that up to the masses. You got to have he could explain it in any sort of way, but he showed no emotion. So in this case, I think this is perfect for President Trump. He's got to show raw emotion. He's got to talk about their families. He's got to talk about not just the victims, but what it means to the parents, to their families, to their communities, And I think that's powerful. And remind people the border issue is not a border state issue.
Right.
It's an issue not only for those in the most egregious situations like this, but when a 16-year-old kid dies in an overdose from fentanyl in Moissanee, Wisconsin, this is making it a national security issue that cannot take a back seat as it has under Joe Biden.
You wrote a piece about Tulsi Gabbard not being the right choice for Trump in terms of his running mate. Who do you think is? Who do you? What's your short list if you have one?
Well, I think ideally I like competence. I like people who are solid. I think obviously part of it is you want to do no harm. So to me, people like Tim Scott, like Marco Rubio, I think are qualified senators. I prefer governors. I like Ron DeSantis.
Mm-hmm.
I like Kim Reynolds in Iowa. I think he's done a fabulous job. I think Glenn Youngkin. Normally my trend is you don't pick someone in their first term because they've proved themselves. But in Virginia, there is only one term. I think those are the sorts of folks that really not just add a popular name to the ticket, but what he needs more than anything, I think, is this sense, as he did 8 years ago, putting someone on that showed, hey, this is a guy who's ready to govern. This is a guy who's ready to get things done. These are serious elected officials. These are people who get things done. And that's just, and I'd even add Doug Burgum. I've served with Doug. He's a good guy. He's not maybe as exciting as some of the others, but that's all right. He's competent. He's a business guy. Any of those folks, I think, add to the ticket what you want, which is not a lot of pizzazz. Donald Trump's got more than enough charisma, more than enough excitement, more than enough celebrity status. What you want is to send a signal, particularly to the suburban college-age voters who, again, 4 years ago maybe slipped away because they didn't like the tone, but now have had it because of their own personal economic situations, and they're just disgusted with how incompetent Joe Biden is. You need to send them a message that, hey, I'm going to put competent people in my administration who are going to get things done again.
Well, there's one other thing that's particularly important, it seems to me, about his selection, is that you have to be thinking about legacy. Like in terms of the next, who's going to take this flag beyond 2028, and so. And I think like a Doug Burgum. I mean, he's 70. I think there's a generational piece to this too. I think, which is why I like DeSantis. I also like. She's not mentioned, and I'm hoping maybe he will surprise by picking someone who is not being mentioned and purposefully sort of setting up this surprise pick. But Sarah Sanders.
I think she'd be great, and I think my normal instinct against a first-term governor is a little bit different in her case, just because having worked in the White House, having been in such an important position, that gives her a little bit more credibility than, say, somebody else who's a first-termer. Again, you're right. It is all about not only getting things done, but people aren't dumb. They know no matter what, 4 years from now, there's going to be a new president in either party. And so you look at Kamala Harris and you say, well, I don't want her. I'd like to have someone at that one debate that they'll have between the running mates and have people go, well, whether it's Governor Sanders or one of the other names I mentioned, these individuals are so much, much better. That really sends a message for the future. I also want to make sure he's not putting someone on who's going to be a mess. That's why I wrote the thing about former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
I'm glad she's walked away from her party. I'm glad that she's taking on Joe Biden. But I don't want someone a heartbeat away from the Oval Office who's got the kind of voting record that she had just a few years ago. We're glad to welcome her in, but I'd say, put her in your cabinet, make her the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. She was a great veteran, served her country. That's a perfect spot. Who's someone who's walked away from their party but hasn't yet clearly walked away from some of their very, very liberal positions.
Yeah, she's got a long way to go. We've spent a lot of time, obviously, talking about the DNC in Chicago because of the security concerns and because of the, general incompetence of city and state government here. But what about the RNC in Milwaukee and concerns about, Milwaukee's got a violence problem, and then you add in the professional protesters that will certainly descend on Milwaukee as they will Chicago. What's your handle on an expectation about the RNC in Milwaukee?
Oh, I think there's legitimate concerns in both places. I was glad that Reince Priebus, fellow cheesehead, former RNC chair, former chief of staff of the president, was able to get additional security resources for both the RNC and DNC, because I think there's, as we've seen on our college campuses, albeit a small radical minority, there's a lot of folks, whether it's on a college campus, as we've dealt with it, Young America's Foundation or elsewhere, there's a lot of people trying to stir up anger, particularly over the Middle East, but over other issues as well. We've repeatedly seen it, as you know, talking about Chicago, we repeatedly have seen it at Democrat events, even within fundraisers. So I expect there to be a significant mess there. Our biggest problem in Wisconsin and in Milwaukee right now is just that for whatever reason, the Federal Secret Service is allowing protesters closer than people like Senator Johnson and others want. You can protest, but just it shouldn't be in any way close enough to cause disruption. Exactly. And that's, we know that well at Young America's Foundation. We're dealing with the hecklers vetoes all the time, meaning the people come into lectures and disrupt and try and stop students from being able to hear. That shouldn't be the case on a college campus. It certainly shouldn't be the case at a national convention of either party. But
do you think
likely to happen.
Yeah. Do you think having the RNC in Milwaukee or in Wisconsin will help Trump secure Wisconsin?
I think every little bit helps. I mean, statistically, the data shows that typically the party who has a convention doesn't necessarily have any more of an edge coming out of the convention. I think the last 6 conventions of either party, the only place that a convention's helped was Ohio in 2016 when the convention was in Cleveland. So my hope is we replicate that. But again, in a state where every little thing counts, particularly, I mean, I hate to say this with your listeners, but you guys can relate to this. We, with sports and everything else, a difference between Chicago and Milwaukee kind of sends a message as to where parties' priorities are, and any little bit, if people are wondering, well, he's in Wisconsin versus the other guys in Chicago, any bit of it will help along the way. The key, though, is it's what happens after that. It's what happens on June 27th, what happens at the other debate. It's what happens with Demeter. To me, the more that Donald Trump can focus on these core issues, and again, it's those 3, high prices and jobs, border security, and public safety, the more he focuses on those. As you know, with the problems you see with the totally dysfunctional government in Chicago, I like to think it's a microcosm of saying this is the kind of America that you get with Joe Biden for the next 4 years. And that's a powerful message in Wisconsin and anywhere else.
Governor Scott Walker, former Wisconsin governor, now president and CEO of Young America's Foundation. Governor Walker, thanks as always.
Have a good one.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Our communities deserve to have their tax dollars spent efficiently. All over Chicagoland, there is an increased need for vital projects like wetland improvements, enhancing water quality, or stormwater mitigation to protect homes against devastating floods. Too often, public officials find themselves at the mercy of outside advisors when planning, budgeting, and building these projects. And let's face it, they rarely meet deadlines or budgets, leaving our communities vulnerable. There's a better way forward. Control Point Engineering. At Control Point Engineering, we're more than just civil engineering.